Well, it's going to be a busy day on Parliament Hill with King Charles and Queen Camilla set to arrive in Canada today. And we're joined live this morning by CTV's royal commentator Richard Berthelsen to discuss how the capital is readying for a royal visit and the significance as well. Richard, good to talk to you this morning. A lot of Canadians were a little concerned about how the king maybe didn't respond with much force to Donald Trump's threats to our sovereignty, etc. What do you think we may hear from the king on this visit, and how important is it for him to deliver that message of Canadian sovereignty?
Well, the king is a constitutional monarch, and so he acts on the advice of ministers. And the other point, important point to realize is that the king is probably best positioned to make that response on Canadian soil, where he is clearly acting on the advice of Canadian ministers. So tomorrow, the ultimate state occasion, which is the opening of Parliament, that speech is written by the government, and so the king will give his voice to the government's words about the sovereignty of this country and the threats we're facing. Of course, it's going to be done in a tactful way because it's not a political speech in the sense of a partisan speech, but it's a very important state occasion. So that is where we're going to hear a very strong statement. It's going to be in the king's voice, and it's going to be delivered to an international audience because the level of interest in this visit in the United States, but also elsewhere, and particularly in the United Kingdom, is also very intense. So this is going to be a very important moment for the king to put his thumb on the scale of Canada and the way we see the issues that are facing us with the threats by President Trump.
And Richard, this is a very historic visit. The king has not set foot on Canada since his coronation 2 years ago. But prior to that, Queen Elizabeth was the one who read the throne speech. Talk about the significance of this, because it hasn't happened many times in history. I believe this would be the third time or so.
That's right, the third time in Canada. Now, the late Queen was very good about going to every single one of the countries that she was head of state of and giving at least one throne speech. In New Zealand, I think she did 7. So, that has happened throughout the Commonwealth. The Queen felt it was important to do that. I think the King also agrees that that's a very important statement because it really suggests the role that the King plays in this country, which is part of Parliament, part of our constitutional architecture. So it is going to be very historic. It's historic that it's his first visit, but let's remember, he's been here 19 times prior. He's been to every part of the country. He's multiply visited most provinces and territories. I mean, he dove under the ice in the Arctic Ocean. He's done all sorts of things in the nooks and crannies of this country. So he really does know the country. But this marks a new chapter where he is performing the roles of the sovereign, of King of Canada. And so we're going to see a different side of him in that sense. And I think Canadians are also waking up to a different side of him. He's a little elderly. He's obviously had some personal issues, particularly with cancer in the last year. I think Canadians are looking at him with a slightly different eye and probably a little bit of admiration for getting on a plane to come over here for 24 hours just to perform this function, which is so important to us.
And that's what I wanted to get to, Richard, because I think some people may be anticipating and looking forward to seeing the King and Queen. However, it is a very brief trip. Do you think that is more a nod to the health of the King?
No, I think it's simply a question of the palace was unable to act on a lot of this until the election was concluded. And with the level of political instability in this country, with the resignation of Prime Minister Trudeau and, the Parliament being on a knife edge, the palace would not have been able to come here. So listen, the Prime Minister, Mr. Carney, was on the phone the morning after the election, tendering this invitation. The King's schedule is very, very committed, long in advance. They found this 48-hour window, and here he is. And it is also probably the earliest possible moment Parliament could have met. So the palace was extremely acquiescent to the Canadian request, and the timing and the length of time of the visit is simply a function of on the short notice on which it's being organized.
Yeah, okay. And very quickly, Richard, Queen Camilla, what is the Canadian government doing to kind of recognize her? What's her role?
Well, she'll be playing a full part in the visit. She'll be, of course, in the Senate chamber tomorrow with a speech from the throne. People will be watching to see what she's wearing, no doubt. I'm sure there'll be a few nods to Canadian jewelry in the royal wardrobe. And the Queen will be made a Canadian Privy Councillor, which is a ceremonial body that advises the King formally. All cabinet ministers are also a part of it. Others have been made part of it over the years. Prince Philip was made part of it on his first visit with us in 1957. So that's a little nod to the Queen, and she'll be playing, I'm sure, a full role at the walkabouts, greeting the public, accepting flowers, and having a little laugh here and there, as she is wont to do.
Yeah, the royal couple likely in the air right now, getting closer. Okay, Richard Berthelsen, appreciate appreciate the time this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.